Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the dim, dusty light of an Imperial Roman morning, where you wake not in your modern bed, but on a straw-stuffed mattress inside a creaking fourth-floor insula that feels like it might collapse every time someone downstairs sneezes. You blink at the ceiling, well, at the cracks in the ceiling, and notice how every sound in this ancient building travels upward. Someone is arguing 2 floors below. Someone else is stomping around above you. A baby is crying somewhere in the maze of rooms that barely deserve the word rooms. Already you can tell this isn't going to be restful, and honestly, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know down in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it for you right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're lying on your back, if you can call this lying comfortably, and the first thing you realize is that the air is thick. Imperial Rome loves dust. It drifts in from the street, from the courtyard, from the cracks in the wooden shutters. It smells faintly of old straw, stale bread, oil residue, and a hint of smoke from last night's tiny lamp. A historian once joked that Roman apartment air had texture, and you're beginning to understand exactly what he meant. You swing your feet to the floor and immediately regret it. The tiles are cold, and the uneven floorboards creak beneath you in a way that makes you wonder if this entire insula was built by someone who ran out of patience halfway through construction. Spoiler: many of these were thrown up quickly by landlords hoping to make money off overcrowded housing, and historians still argue whether the average insula collapsed every few decades or every few years. Not exactly comforting. As you stand, your back protests. Straw mattresses in Rome aren't designed for spinal happiness. They're designed to exist, and that's about it. You stretch, hit your elbow on a low beam, mutter something under your breath, and then shuffle toward the tiny window carved into the wall. You push the shutters open, and immediately the city assaults your senses. Noise, even at this hour. Vendors shouting, cartwheels grinding, dogs barking, someone yelling about stolen bread. A group of men loudly debating politics with the enthusiasm of modern sports fans. The smell of fresh bread, smoke, manure, and river mist all swirl together, forming an aroma that is uniquely Roman. The mainstream historical fact here: ancient Rome was incredibly loud. One writer complained he couldn't sleep because of the constant noise of wagons, arguments, and iron-shod hooves clattering on stone. You're not even outside yet, and already you feel overwhelmed. Before stepping out, you're supposed to wash your face using a small ceramic basin in the corner, except the water looks questionable. It's the same water you used yesterday and the day before, because fresh water isn't exactly something your landlord provides in the unlimited quantities. You splash some on your face anyway, hoping it doesn't give you a rash, and then take one bite of yesterday's leftover bread. It's hard, very hard. You consider dunking it in oil, except you don't have oil left. Great start. Your sandals are waiting by the door. They're simple, leather straps held together by hope and friction. As you slip them on, you hear another argument outside, this one about rent. Apparently your neighbour hasn't paid. Again. In Rome, landlords were infamous for being demanding, impatient, and loud, a combination that doesn't pair well with thin walls. You open your door and step into the narrow hallway, which feels less like a hallway, and more like a wooden balcony built by someone who trusted the gods more than the engineering. The stairs downward are steep, dark, and worn smooth by thousands of feet. You grip the railing and take each step carefully. It would be very embarrassing to die before even reaching the street. A quirky little tidbit. Some insular staircases were so narrow that people had to turn sideways to pass each other, which meant that morning traffic in these buildings sometimes resembled a farcical dance. You get a taste of that now, as you squeeze past a man carrying a basket of olives. He nods. You nod. Both of you pretend this interaction was normal. Finally, you reach the ground floor and push open the main door. A burst of sunlight hits your eyes, and with it, the full force of Rome's early chaos. Children racing through the alleyway, a donkey loudly complaining about its life choices, a woman balancing a clay pot on her head while yelling at her husband, stalls being set up for the day's commerce, smoke rising from small cook fires, a man playing a reed flute terribly, truly, impressively terribly. The city doesn't ease you in gently. Rome is like someone tossing you into the deep end of a bathhouse pool and saying, "You'll get used to it eventually." You take one step onto the uneven street stones, and your sandal immediately catches between two slabs. You yank your foot free, muttering a sleepy, sarcastic comment to yourself about ancient urban planning, then begin walking forward while trying not to get trampled. Because here's the thing, nobody slows down for you. Romans move with a purpose, and if you pause too long, someone will shoulder past you without an apology. And as you breathe in the city's morning air, a final thought hits you. Even this, the quietest part of the day, already feels like too much. This is just the beginning. Surviving one full day here, bold of you to assume. You take a few careful steps along the uneven stones, and the moment you turn the first corner, Imperial Rome introduces you to its true morning personality. Whatever chaos you thought you heard from your window, that was the warm-up act. The streets at sunrise are a full sensory assault, and you're right in the centre of it. You keep walking, trying to look like someone who knows what they're doing. Spoiler, you absolutely do not. Vendors are already shouting with enough enthusiasm to power a small modern city. One man is loudly advertising figs that he claims were blessed by Fortuna, though the shriveled look of them suggests otherwise. Another vendor is selling cheap wine at an hour when most people today would still be brushing their teeth. Not in Rome. Breakfast wine is surprisingly normal here. A mainstream historical fact. Poor Romans typically skipped a big breakfast and instead nibbled bread, olives, or cheese with a sip of diluted wine. You suddenly feel a little better about your stale loaf. A cat darts across your path, chasing something you choose not to identify. You swear the cat looks healthier and more confident than you do. Rome's street animals are tough. They've seen things. You, on the other hand, nearly jump when a cart rumbles past, its wheels grinding loudly against the stone. The driver doesn't even glance at you as he yells at his donkey to move faster. The donkey, to its credit, ignores him completely. You try to step aside to avoid a collision and immediately regret it because you've stepped into something wet, very wet, suspiciously wet. A small part of you hopes it's just spilled water from someone's bucket. A far more realistic part knows Rome's streets double as a neighbourhood drainage system. Romans often dumped chamber pot contents out the window, usually with a shouted warning, but usually as doing a lot of work there. You shuffle forward with a tiny grimace, wiping your sandal on a patch of grass that looks dry enough. A fringe little tidbit. Some Romans believed that stepping in certain puddles could bring luck. You're pretty sure this is not one of those puddles. You look up, trying to reorient yourself, but there's no real pattern to the morning movement. Workers with tools over their shoulders hurry toward construction sites. Fishmongers carry baskets that make the entire street smell like the sea, if the sea had given up on hygiene. A flock of geese, absolutely convinced they own the place, march directly toward you. And when geese march, you get out of the way. Quickly. The noise level steadily increases. You hear metal striking metal, sandals slapping stone, a distant horn from the forum area, and the never-ending stream of people bargaining, arguing, laughing, or yelling at someone who probably isn't even listening. Historians still argue whether mornings were the loudest or the evenings were, but either way, quiet is not a Roman concept. You try hugging the side of a building to avoid the densest parts of the crowd. That works, briefly, until a baker opens his shutters right above you and unleashes a cloud of flour dust that snows directly onto your hair. You sputter, pat your head, and catch the baker's amused shrug. Welcome to Rome, where the city itself participates in the bullying. You push forward, weaving between bodies, carts, and animals, and finally spot a small open area where people seem to be gathering. You move toward it instinctively, drawn by curiosity and the chance to breathe, but the moment you step into the space, a group of teenagers sprint past you, nearly knocking you sideways. They're laughing, carrying clay pots, and moving like they're late to chaos itself. One drops a pot. It shatters. No one helps him. He shrugs, kicks the remains aside, and keeps going. That, apparently, is morning culture. You try again to find a calmer route. You slip into a side alley, which seems like it might be quieter, until you realize it's darker, narrower, and filled with the smell of something fermenting. Something that absolutely should not be fermenting. You back out instantly. Even Rome's shadows have shadows. Returning to the main street, you try adopting the Roman walking style. Brisk pace, tight shoulders, eyes forward, Small steps, minimal hesitation. It sort of works. You blend in just long enough to avoid 2 collisions, 1 runaway dog, and an angry woman defending her vegetable stall with a ladle like a weapon. Then someone bumps you, hard. You whirl around, ready to apologize, but the man is already gone. You pat your side instinctively, nothing missing. Good. Petty theft is common here, especially in crowds. Romans even had slang for pickpockets. You can't help but give yourself a tiny, sleepy little victory nod for not losing your last coin. As you navigate the next stretch of street, you notice how dense the layers of life are. Laundry hanging overhead, kids practicing wrestling moves, a man carrying an amphora the size of a teenager, another man shouting about cheap sandals while waving one broken sandal in the air, apparently as proof that his new ones are superior. You stop just for a moment to take in the scene. The heat hasn't sunk in yet, but the energy is already overwhelming. Rome wakes fast, Rome wakes loud, and Rome expects you to keep up. You exhale, realizing that in Imperial Rome, before breakfast is not a calm, gentle phase of the day. It's survival training. You take another steadying breath as you step deeper into the morning rush, and it hits you. Navigating Roman crowds is not a gentle stroll. It's a full-contact sport with unclear rules, no referees, and participants who have been training since childhood. You try to slip into the flow the way locals do, but the moment you merge with the river of people, you realize how fast everything moves. Romans do not saunter, they surge. Your first challenge appears instantly, a cluster of men arguing passionately about some political issue you can't quite catch. They're gesturing wildly, waving their arms so close to your face that you instinctively duck. A mainstream fact: Romans loved public debate. They could turn a simple comment about grain prices into a 3-hour argument, complete with insults, quotes from poets, and one very dramatic exit. You quickly sidestep the cluster, hoping not to be drafted into their conversation. But escaping them just pushes you into the next wave. 2 men carrying a long wooden beam between them. They shout, "Cave!" the ancient Roman version of heads up, and you flatten yourself against a wall so you don't get clotheslined before noon. They sweep past without apologizing, leaving you blinking and trying to look like this is all completely normal. Spoiler, it is not. You press back into the moving tide. To your left, a butcher is hauling a carcass toward his stall. To your right, a group of schoolboys recites poetry as their teacher claps out rhythm with a stick. One boy stumbles on a line. The teacher gives him the kind of look that says, "You better fix that before Cicero haunts us all." The boy tries again. You try not to giggle. You take another strategic step forward and immediately collide with a goat. A goat with opinions. It bleats at you like you're the problem. And maybe you are. Goats have seniority here. You mutter a quiet apology as the goat's owner tugs it along, shaking his head as if encountering confused strangers is his personal burden to bear. The street narrows again, funneling everyone into a tight passage. You're squeezed between a woman carrying a basket of onions and a man with an armful of scrolls. The onions are winning the scent battle. You try not to inhale too deeply. Every few steps, someone bumps your shoulder. No one says anything. This is Rome. If you're not touching 3 people at once, something has gone wrong. Historians still argue whether the density of Roman street life was more chaotic near the Forum or in residential districts like this one. But from inside this living pinball machine, you get the feeling the answer is both, with a special footnote of good luck surviving either. Just when you think you've found a rhythm, the street erupts, literally, with the sound of clanging metal behind you. You spin around just in time to dodge a tangle of slaves pushing a cart overloaded with amphorae. They shout warnings at each other, not at you. You dive out of their path, your sandals skidding across the stones, and catch yourself with a hand against the wall. Smooth, totally intentional. Maybe no one noticed. You turn back around, and now you're face to face with a chicken. A single, rogue chicken, pecking at the dirt like it's solving a mystery. You step around it carefully, not wanting to ignite a poultry-based feud. One wrong move and that chicken will absolutely chase you, and you are not ready for that level of emotional damage before lunch. You make a small victory gain, 10 uninterrupted steps forward, but then the crowd suddenly shifts. A street performer, painted head to toe in white chalk, leaps into the centre of the lane and begins reciting lines from an epic poem. People cheer, a few toss coins. You freeze. You have no idea whether going around him is disrespectful or expected. He solves the dilemma by dramatically extending an arm right in front of you and proclaiming, "Behold, you behold." Then you sneak past while the crowd is distracted. Not a moment later, a pair of prostitutes stroll by, laughing loudly, completely comfortable weaving through the masses. They move with more confidence than you've had all day. You try to mimic their effortless dodging technique, but instead you miscalculate and bump into a man carrying a tray of pastries. One pastry flies, like actually flies. It arcs through the air in slow motion before landing on a dog who interprets this as divine blessing and sprints away joyfully. The pastry seller curses. You offer a weak smile. He rolls his eyes and keeps moving. Your shoulders are tense, your pace is uneven, your brain is already buzzing from overstimulation, and your stomach rumbles. Not from hunger necessarily, but from sheer nerves. A quirky little tidbit. Some Romans believed that the morning streets carried omens, hidden in the words of passing strangers or the behaviour of animals. If that chicken earlier was any kind of omen, you're in for a long day. Finally, the crowd opens slightly. Not much, but enough that you can walk without feeling like a sock in a dryer. You breathe easier. Rome hasn't defeated you yet. But as you look ahead, seeing thicker crowds, louder voices, carts barreling forward, and a man trying to balance 3 amphorae on one shoulder, you realise the day has barely begun. And navigating these crowds is only the warm-up for what Imperial Rome has in store for you next. You finally break free from the worst of the crowd, only to realise you've exchanged one challenge for another. Your mouth is dry, very dry, and you suddenly become aware that you haven't had a proper drink since you woke up. In Imperial Rome, hydration isn't as simple as turning on a tap. No tap exists, no plumbing in your apartment, no kitchen sink waiting to save you. Your only option is to find a public fountain, and like everything else in this city, even that comes with complications. You spot a small lacus, a public fountain up ahead. It's fed by one of the great aqueducts, which is a mainstream fact worth appreciating. Rome's water system was one of the most impressive engineering feats of the ancient world. Fresh flowing water travelled miles into the city through masterfully built channels. In theory, this should be great news for your thirst. In practice, the fountain is busy. People are filling jugs, washing hands, rinsing vegetables, splashing kids, and, questionably, cleaning a chicken. The chicken does not look thrilled. You hesitate, wondering if drinking from the same spout used for poultry bath time is really the move you want to make. You approach slowly, trying to look casual. The woman in front of you finishes rinsing her carrots, steps aside, and gives you a polite nod. You nod back, pretending you know exactly how all this works. You cup your hands under the water and bring it to your lips. It's cool and surprisingly refreshing. For a brief moment you feel victorious. Hydrated, connected to ancient engineering, maybe even slightly Roman. Then a man behind you clears his throat. Loudly, you realise you're hogging the spout. You hurry aside with a sheepish grin, letting him through. In Rome, fountain etiquette is a delicate art form. People move fast, no lingering, no overfilling, and absolutely no blocking the flow. You nearly committed a fountain faux pas, which could get you scolded by elderly Roman women, a fearsome experience in any century. As you step back, water dripping from your fingers, you notice a small canal at the base of the fountain where excess water flows into the gutter along the street. A quirky tidbit. Romans used this runoff to clean the streets and to flush waste. That's right. The gutter you're peering into right now serves multiple purposes, and very few of them are clean. You casually inch away from it, not wanting to contemplate how close your sandal just got to, well, you know. A man next to you fills a jug, turns, and warns you in a low voice. Stay away from the lower channels. He nods toward a murky trickle farther down the street. Not good water. You thank him, grateful for the unsolicited survival tip. Rome might be advanced, but it's also full of invisible hazards. Water quality is one of them. Historians still argue whether lead pipes truly caused widespread health issues, or whether the constant flow diluted most contaminants. Either way, you're suddenly aware that your refreshing sip might come with long-term consequences, if you lived long enough for long-term consequences. You resume walking, feeling marginally better, hydrated but not remotely reassured. Ahead, you see another crowd forming around a different fountain, this one larger, grander, decorated with a marble face of a river god spouting water from his mouth. People fill amphorae beneath him, chatting cheerfully. You watch for a moment, appreciating the artistry. Rome doesn't do subtle. Even its fountains look like they're auditioning for a divine beauty contest. But even here, danger lurks. A child accidentally drops a small wooden cup into the basin. He reaches for it. His mother shrieks and yanks him back. You blink. Overreaction. Not really. Falling into a large Roman basin meant risking broken bones or far worse. You add "don't fall into fountains" to your growing list of survival rules. You take a few more steps toward the edge of the square, trying to decide where to go next. Your stomach growls softly, not from hunger exactly, but from the uneasy combination of ancient water, morning anxiety, and the lingering scent of those rinsed carrots. You're not sick. Yet. Hopefully. As you stroll, still processing your near encounter with poultry-infused hydration, your sandal slides slightly on a patch of wet stone. You steady yourself quickly. Rome's public water system is incredible, except when it's turning the streets into a slip and slide of doom. One wrong step and you could easily twist an ankle, which in this time period is a more serious setback than you want to think about. You pause, letting the crowd stream around you, and realize something quietly profound. Staying hydrated in Imperial Rome isn't just about finding water. It's about finding safe water, drinking it fast enough not to block anyone else, avoiding runoff channels, not irritating locals, and not slipping into a puddle that's definitely not rainwater. And as much as you admire the aqueducts, you can't help feeling a tiny tug of nostalgia for the simple luxury of a water bottle. Still, you survived the fountain. You even got a moment of cool refreshment out of it. But Rome being Rome, the next challenge is already waiting. Traffic. Very loud, very dangerous, very indifferent traffic. And you, unfortunately, are headed straight into it. You leave the fountain behind, feeling mildly refreshed, but increasingly aware that hydration was the easy part of your morning. The real challenge rolls toward you, quite literally, on wooden wheels. Roman traffic is coming, and if you thought navigating crowds was intense, wait until you meet the carts, animals, and drivers who treat the streets like their own personal chariot racetrack. The first warning arrives as a distant rumble beneath your feet. You pause, uncertain whether it's your imagination or a sign that Mount Vesuvius has chosen a terrible day for you to visit Rome. But no, it's the unmistakable clatter of iron-shod wheels on stone. A cart is approaching, and fast. You step to the side instinctively. This is good. This is survival instinct. Unfortunately, survival instinct doesn't guarantee you've stepped to the correct side. The cart barrels around the corner at a speed that suggests the driver is either late for something important or completely uninterested in the value of human life. Maybe both. A mainstream historical fact. Wheeled traffic was technically banned inside the city during most daytime hours to reduce congestion and noise. But exceptions were numerous, and enforcement was, let's call it optimistic. The result? Carts still tore through the streets whenever they pleased, and you, new, soft, modern, unprepared, are standing directly in their path. You throw yourself back toward the wall, heart pounding, just as the cart roars past. The driver shouts something that might be an insult or might be advice. Hard to tell in Latin when you're panicking. The donkey pulling the cart gives you a side eye like you caused the problem. You exhale shakily, and then immediately inhale sharply, because another cart is coming, from the opposite direction. Rome has no painted lanes, no stop signs, no speed limits, just pure chaotic movement. People squeeze against buildings or leap out of the way with the kind of reflexes you normally only see in action movies. You attempt to mimic the locals, pressing yourself flat against plaster so crumbly it leaves powder on your tunic. This cart passes only inches from your toes. You swear you feel a breeze. Before your nerves recover, a group of porters carrying a sedan chair cut directly across your path. You hop backward to avoid being shoulder-checked by someone who looks like they could lift a small house. The person inside the chair peeks out, a wealthy Roman woman fanning herself dramatically, completely unfazed by the chaos she's creating. You resist the urge to bow awkwardly, or wave, or apologize for existing. You try to move again, but the street bottlenecks ahead. Two carts are attempting to pass each other in a space that absolutely cannot accommodate two carts. The drivers begin shouting, loudly, with creativity. Their donkeys bray in protest. A crowd forms instantly, half curious, half inconvenienced. You're pushed into the cluster whether you want to be or not. You attempt to look casual while being squished between strangers. Someone's elbow digs into your ribs. Someone else steps on your sandal. Discomfort becomes a group project. A quirky tidbit. Romans often hired professional traffic directors, essentially human roundabouts, who stood at intersections waving people through. Their effectiveness varied wildly. You do not see one here. You could use one badly. The shouting escalates. One driver jumps down from his cart and waves his arms like a man reenacting a shipwreck. The other driver does the same. They argue about right-of-way, which would be very helpful, except Rome does not have right-of-way rules. They argue anyway. Historians still debate whether Romans genuinely believed shouting solved traffic problems, or whether it was simply the chosen cultural coping mechanism. Based on what you're witnessing, the answer is absolutely yes. Eventually, the drivers come to a miraculous, unspoken agreement. One backs up a few feet, the other squeezes forward. The carts scrape past each other with a sound that makes your teeth itch. The crowd disperses, and just like that, traffic flows again as if nothing happened. You step out of the human bottleneck, breathless, dusty, and mildly traumatized. You attempt to cross the street, but this is a mistake. Romans don't cross the street. They dart, lunge, sprint, or accept their fate. You choose dart, making it halfway before a mule emerges from nowhere. You jump back so dramatically that a child watching nearby snorts with laughter. You resist the urge to tell him that modern crosswalks are superior in every possible way. After a few tense moments, you manage to get across. A small victory, a tiny triumph. You're still alive, which feels like an accomplishment worth celebrating. And yet, as you stand on the opposite side, catching your breath, you realize this simple reality. Roman traffic is not a backdrop. It's not scenery. It's a living threat that moves fast, thinks little, and absolutely does not care whether you survive the day. You glance down the road and watch the carts, animals, and pedestrians weaving together in a dizzying ballet of noise, dust, and unpredictability. You survive this crossing. You might not survive the next. But right now, you're headed towards something every Roman participates in, a bathhouse visit. And you're absolutely not prepared for the etiquette test waiting inside. You limp away from the gauntlet of carts and mules with the weary pride of someone who has battled Roman traffic and lived to tell the tale. You're sweaty, dusty, mildly bruised, and, for reasons you don't want to investigate too closely, your sandal now smells faintly like donkey. Congratulations, you've earned a break, or at least you think you have. Because in Imperial Rome, when life gets hectic, people don't take a nap, they go to the baths, and you, trying hard to blend in, head that way too. The moment you approach the bathhouse complex, its large courtyard, columns, and carved stone facade, you realize this is not some quiet medieval spa. This is more like a Roman social media hub, gym, mall, cafe, and gossip center, all rolled into one. And the first rule of bathhouse survival? You're expected to already know the rules. Spoiler, you do not. You step through the entrance arch and are immediately greeted by warm, moist air, scented faintly with olive oil and smoke from the heating furnaces beneath the floors. A mainstream historical fact. Roman bathhouses were powered by a hypocos system, brilliant underfloor heating where slaves stoked fires day and night to keep the rooms warm. Sounds relaxing, right? In reality, it means the whole place has the cozy ambiance of a bread oven. A slave takes one look at your dusty tunic and gestures toward the changing area. You follow, entering a bustling room where men sit on stone benches, removing clothes, folding garments with surprising care, and rubbing themselves down with oil. Others are handing their belongings to attendants. You mimic what everyone else does. Slip off your shoes, peel off your dusty outer layer, and try not to look too confused. Your first mistake arrives almost instantly. You try to keep one item of clothing on, modesty and all that, but a sharp-eyed attendant raises an eyebrow and gives you a look Romans reserve for people who absolutely do not understand how anything works. You sigh internally. Fine. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. You remove the extra layer and hand your clothes to the attendant, who stores them in a cubby, with a casualness that suggests theft is very much possible. A quirky tidbit. Clothes were so commonly stolen in bathhouses that Romans wrote angry poems about it. You glance at your cubby nervously, already imagining a long, chilly walk home if things go badly. You follow the flow of bodies into the next chamber, the tepidarium, the warm room. The heat wraps around you immediately, not uncomfortably but enough to make your eyelashes sweat. The floor radiates warmth from the hypercourse below. You try to move gracefully, but the combination of steam, heat, and slippery tiles turns your gait into something between a shuffle and a gentle slide. A nearby Roman chuckles under his breath. You pretend not to hear. Everyone around you seems to instinctively know what to do. They rub oil on their skin. They chat loudly about politics, sports, rumours, scandals, the usual Roman morning topics. Two men argue heatedly about a charioteer's performance. One insists he's the best in the city. The other insists he couldn't drive a cart straight if Mars himself appeared to give directions. You nod, as though you too have strong opinions on ancient horse racing. An attendant approaches you carrying a small flask of oil. You accept it, apply a thin layer to your arms like everyone else, and then wait for the next step. This waiting is your second mistake, because here, no one waits. The next step happens fast, the strigil, a curved metal scraper used to remove oil, sweat, and dirt. A man demonstrating technique scrapes his arm confidently, flicking the mixture of grime onto the floor without a second thought. The floor is basically a soup of ancient exfoliant. You attempt the same motion and immediately realize this device is more aggressive than expected. The scrape makes a sound you don't love. Still, you keep going, hoping no one notices how tentative your movements are. A few people glance at you with polite amusement. You are, for better or worse, bathhouse entertainment. Once scraped, you follow the crowd into the caldarium, the hot room. And hot room is an understatement. The moment you step inside, heat slams into you like a sun god's bear hug. Steam fills your lungs, your skin instantly feels too small, sweat begins its heroic journey. You try to sit on the stone bench, only to leap up because it's approximately the temperature of freshly baked pottery. A man beside you nods sympathetically and says something that roughly translates to "you get used to it." You smile weakly. You do not get used to it. This room is where Romans open their pores, debate philosophy, gossip mercilessly, and occasionally pass out from heat. Historians still argue whether the daily hot room visits contributed to longer lifespans or simply made illness more dramatic. You're not here long enough to contribute meaningfully to the debate. Desperate for air, you shuffle toward the frigidarium, the cold room. The transition from volcanic heat to crisp chill feels like being reborn. You inhale deeply, grateful for the relief. Other bathers plunge into the cold pool without hesitation. You dip one toe in and have immediate regrets. The water is so cold it could wake the dead. You lower yourself in gradually, making a face your modern friends would politely roast you for. But then, something magical happens. For the first time today, your senses settle, your muscles ease, the noise fades into a pleasant echo. You feel, dare you say it, relaxed. At least until someone cannonballs into the pool next to you. Water splashes in your face. You sputter, startled. The man laughs. Rome has no respect for personal space or quiet contemplation. You exit the pool, dripping, shivering, and humbled. You gather your things, praying your clothing hasn't been stolen. Miraculously, it's still there. You dress quickly, still damp, and step back outside into the sunlight. You're clean. You're refreshed. You even smell faintly like olive oil and victory. But the midday sun is climbing, and the calm you found in the baths evaporates immediately as heat begins to press against your freshly scrubbed skin. It's only noon, and Imperial Rome is about to show you just how brutal its sun can be. You step out of the bathhouse feeling cleaner, smoother, and marginally more alive than you were an hour ago. But the moment the door closes behind you, the outside world slams into you like a furnace blast. The midday Roman sun is not gentle. It is not charming. It is not warm and pleasant. It is a fiery hammer swinging directly at your freshly exfoliated face. The heat hits your skin so suddenly, you wonder if the sun has personal issues with you. You blink, squint, and take a hesitant step into the open street. The brightness is almost painful, reflecting off pale stone, white plaster walls, bronze fixtures, and passing shields. Romans loved white surfaces and shiny metal, which was great for aesthetics and terrible for anyone attempting to keep their retinas intact. You feel the heat radiate upward from the pavement stones in shimmering waves. A mainstream historical fact, Rome could get blisteringly hot, especially during the summer, and people often scheduled their entire day around avoiding midday temperatures. You, however, didn't get the memo. You were out here, sweating like a wool cloak in a sauna. Your tunic clings to your back instantly. Your scalp prickles. Your sandals grow warm enough you briefly wonder if they might melt. You try fanning yourself with your hand, but this accomplishes approximately nothing. Around you, locals move with the practiced efficiency of people who know exactly how much energy they can expend before heatstroke sets in. Many hug the shadows cast by tall buildings. Others walk under awnings or slip beneath cloth canopies stretched between shops. You attempt to follow their lead, darting toward the nearest patch of shade like a lizard desperate for survival. But Rome's shade doesn't stay still. The buildings cast narrow, shifting strips of relief, and you find yourself chasing shadows like they owe you money. You pass a group of construction workers hauling massive stones. They're shirtless, tanned, and sweating, but somehow they look less distressed than you do. One smirks as you stagger by, which feels rude but also fair. You give him a little nod of respect. Anyone working in this heat deserves admiration and perhaps a medal. You press forward, seeking another sliver of shade. Your vision wavers slightly, not from danger, yet, but from sheer sensory overload. A don't forget detail, your body is used to air conditioning, filtered water, and fabrics designed for comfort. Rome does not offer any of these luxuries. Rome offers good luck. You keep moving, and that's when the smell hits you. The sun intensifies every scent in the air. Bread baking, sweat, dust, refuse, hot olive oil, and something that might once have been fish, but has now evolved into a new life form. You try to breathe through your mouth, which helps until a gust of wind sends another wave of heat across your face. A quirky tidbit. Romans sometimes used powdered charcoal, or even a paste made from ground-up herbs to reduce sweating. Today you wish you had some, though you suspect you'd simply turn into a roasted, herb-crusted modern human. You glance upward at the rooftops and notice something unexpected. A few Romans lounging up there. Rooftops were often used as escape zones from the heat, catching breezes unavailable at street level. One man lounges under a cloth canopy, sipping watered wine like he's living his best life. For one irrational moment, you envy him enough to consider climbing a building. But the thought of hauling yourself up a sun-scorched ladder in this heat ends that fantasy immediately. You push onward, trying to stay in whatever shade you can steal. Sweat trickles down your temples and into your eyebrows. One drop makes a dramatic leap off your chin and splats onto the stone below. You watch it evaporate almost instantly. Okay, maybe not instantly, but fast enough to make you nervous. As you turn a corner, the sun reclaims you ruthlessly. Your vision pulses. A dog nearby pants heavily, tongue lolling, as if it's giving you a look that says, "Told you not to be out right now." You silently agree with the dog. A water seller passes by calling out, "Fresh water! Fresh water!" He carries a small wooden bucket, clearly hoping to make a few coins. You consider buying some. You really do. But then he scoops water from the bucket with a ladle that may or may not have been washed this decade. You politely shake your head. He shrugs and keeps walking. Historians still argue whether midday was the deadliest time to be outside in Rome, or whether it just felt deadly because wearing heavy wool in summer is a bad life choice. What you do know for sure is that your body is staging a quiet rebellion. You slow down, hugging another building's shadow. A small breeze brushes past your cheek, so faint you're not sure if it actually happened. You lean into it anyway, savouring the microscopic relief. Nearby, a shopkeeper observes your suffering with mild amusement. He gestures to his awning, wordlessly inviting you to stand beneath it for a moment. Grateful, you step into the shade, bowing your head in thanks. He gives you a tiny wave of sympathy, the kind Romans reserve for people they believe will not make it to dinner time. You remain there for a minute, letting your body cool just enough to prevent collapse. Then you step back into the sun with the bravery, or stupidity, of someone who knows they must keep moving. Because heat or not, it's now lunchtime, and you are absolutely not prepared for what Roman food stalls have waiting for you. You peel yourself off the welcome shade like a wilted leaf and step back into the Roman sun, stomach rumbling, sweat dripping, and dignity hanging by a thread. It's midday, the hour when your body begs for food and your brain reminds you that eating in Imperial Rome is basically a gamble every single time. Still, you follow your hunger toward the nearest cluster of food stalls, hoping luck, is on your side. The first scent that hits you is roasted meat, warm, savoury, smoky. It smells amazing. The second scent that hits you is fish. Very old fish. Possibly prehistoric fish resurrected purely to haunt your sinuses. You wrinkle your nose. Rome's food scene, as you quickly discover, is a swirling mix of delightful and disastrous. The marketplace is packed. Vendors shout to advertise everything from sausages to figs to questionable stews bubbling in clay pots. The noise is relentless, but food smells anchor the chaos into something almost comforting. You drift toward a stall where a man grills sausages over glowing coals. The fat drips, sizzling loudly. Your stomach growls with embarrassing enthusiasm. A mainstream historical fact. Most Romans, especially those living in insulae like you, didn't cook at home. Fires were too risky. So street food was not just convenient, it was essential. Today, you understand why. The aroma of freshly grilled meat calls to you like a siren song. The vendor notices your interest and motions you forward. He speaks fast, proudly describing his sausages. You nod, pretending you caught every word, which you absolutely did not. You point at one, and he hands it to you wrapped in a piece of bread that looks slightly burnt. You bite cautiously. It's delicious, salty, savoury, smoky. For one glorious moment, you feel almost competent, like maybe you can survive a day in Rome. Then the aftertaste hits, something sharp, something funky, something that suggests this sausage has lived a life of adventure. A quirky tidbit. Romans often flavoured food with garum, a fermented fish sauce that smelled horrific but tasted apparently incredible to them. You suspect the sausage vendor was very generous with his garum today. You cough into your hand politely, then take another bite because hunger wins over hesitation. As you chew, a woman at the neighbouring stall offers you a cup of wine. It's cheap, watered down, and has floating bits of something you hope is herbs. You sip it anyway. It tastes better than the sausage aftermath, but comes with a faint metallic tang that makes you wonder how many times the cup has been rinsed. You avoid thinking too hard about it. You wander deeper into the food area, curious and slightly bolder now that you've successfully digested something. A man selling honey cakes waves a tray under your nose. You accept one. The cake is warm, sticky, and sweet enough to briefly erase the memory of fermented fish breath. This, you think, is your happy place. Honey, sunlight, and a moment of peace. That peace lasts exactly 6 seconds. Because out of nowhere, a fishmonger slaps a giant slab of tuna onto his cutting board, with a wet thwack that startles you so badly you nearly drop the rest of your honey cake. He begins chopping vigorously, sending tiny droplets of fish juice dangerously close to your tunic. You sidestep, fast. Your eye catches another stall where a pot of stew bubbles, suspiciously. The vendor stirs it, releasing a smell that can only be described as ambitious. You watch a customer ladle some into a bowl, taste it, and shrug approvingly. You remain unconvinced. Then, because Rome never lets you relax, a child sprints past you holding a stolen loaf of bread. The baker chases him, shouting threats involving Jupiter's wrath. You jump aside, narrowly avoiding becoming collateral damage in this dramatic chase scene. The bread thief vanishes into an alley. The baker gives up, muttering about youth these days in Latin. You return to browsing, determined to find something else appetizing. You see olives piled high, grapes glistening in the sun, small pastries dusted with something that might be cinnamon, or dirt. Hard to tell. You see lentil soup served from a giant pot that looks older than the aqueducts. You see skewers of grilled vegetables, which seem safe until you notice the vendor blowing flies off them with half-hearted effort. Historians still argue whether Roman street food was more dangerous because of hygiene, or because preserved food sometimes included lead-containing ingredients. Either way, you begin to feel a familiar twinge of anxiety. Just as your stomach rumbles again, you hear a commotion to your left. 2 vendors are arguing over territory. One insists the other's stall is encroaching on his allotted space. The other claims he's been in this spot since Emperor Augustus was in diapers. Voices rise, hands wave. You decide you've had enough lunchtime drama and start drifting away. As you squeeze between the stalls, a vendor selling dates offers you one for free. Suspiciously free. You accept it, sniff it, and hesitate. Dates can be heavenly, or they can be nature's way of saying, this is not your day. You pop it into your mouth anyway. It's good. Amazingly good. But you don't trust this luck. Not for a second. You take a final look around the bustling food market, the mingling scents, the shouting, the crackling fires, the animals wandering through like they own the place, and realize something very simple. In Imperial Rome, food isn't just nourishment, it's roulette, and you've barely survived lunch. As the heat presses in again and your stomach settles into uneasy truce, you realize it's now time for the part of the day everyone else dreads too, working, or at least pretending to. And Roman work life? Well, let's just say you're not ready for that either. You wipe the crumbs of your honey cake from your fingers, take one last wary glance at the stew that looks like it might attempt sentience, and step away from the food stalls. Your stomach is settling, slowly, cautiously, like a gladiator entering the arena and hoping today isn't the day it meets an angry tiger. But now you face the next unavoidable trial of Imperial Roman life: work. Or more accurately, trying to work without understanding a single thing about how work actually functions here. You follow the flow of people heading toward their various trades. Rome is buzzing. Hammer strikes ring out from blacksmith forges, clay wheels spin in workshops, merchants shout about deals, and scribes scratch away at tablets with the intensity of people who have way too many lists. This city works hard, mostly because it has to. Survival in Rome isn't a hobby, it's a lifestyle. You drift into a street lined with small workshops, capponi and tabernae, where tradesmen practice everything from metalwork to leather crafting. You try to look like you belong. You absolutely do not. A mainstream historical fact: Rome's urban workforce was a complex mix of free labourers, enslaved workers, freedmen, guild members, and apprentices. Everyone had a role, everyone had expectations, and everyone could spot an outsider instantly. You pause beside a carpentry stall where a burly man is sawing a plank of wood with the confidence of someone who's been doing this since childhood. He squints at you, noticing your blank stare. "You looking for work?" he asks. You panic internally. Externally you say, "Yes." "That's so." He gestures to a stack of lumber that looks heavier than your entire gym back home. "Think you can carry these?" You absolutely cannot. But pride is a dangerous thing, so you nod anyway. You grab the nearest board, lift, and immediately regret all your life choices. The plank is heavy. Roman wood does not mess around. Your arms tremble like damp noodles. The carpenter watches, unimpressed. After 3 miserable seconds, he snorts. "Not today, friend." Translation: you have the upper body strength of a slightly determined goose. You set the plank down very carefully, as if placing an offering before a judgmental god. The carpenter waves you off, already returning to his work. Your ego smoulders quietly. You wander on, hoping no one else saw your plank-related humiliation. But this is Rome. Everyone sees everything. A group of teenage apprentices laugh as you pass. You pretend you dropped the plank on purpose, for fitness reasons. They don't buy it. Up ahead, a blacksmith's forge glows orange. You step closer, curious, until a burst of sparks shoots toward your face. You leap back with a sound that might generously be described as a yelp. The blacksmith barely glances up. "Careful," he grunts, "or you'll lose an eyebrow." You automatically touch your eyebrows in self-defense. Hoping for a less dangerous trade, you drift toward a scribe seated under an awning, writing quickly on wax tablets. His stylus scratches with rhythmic precision. You try to look engaged. He looks up, frowns slightly, then hands you a tablet. "Copy this line," he instructs. You hold the stylus like a confused toddler. You scratch a few wobbly marks into the wax. They look nothing like letters. They look like you dropped an ant onto the tablet and it panicked. The scribe studies your work. "Are you ill?" he asks, gently. "No," you whisper. He takes the tablet back with the solemn gravity of someone reclaiming a damaged sacred artifact. "Maybe manual labour would suit you better." Your self-esteem is now sitting in the gutter with yesterday's drain water. You continue down the street, passing potters shaping clay, bakers kneading dough, tailors stitching tunics, and cobblers hammering nails into sandals far sturdier than the sad pair currently clinging to your feet. Every worker moves with the speed and confidence of someone who knows their craft intimately. You move like someone trying not to trip over invisible obstacles. A quirky tidbit. Many Roman shopkeepers lived inside their storefronts, sleeping in back rooms or lofts just feet from where they worked. You hear a baby crying through a thin wall behind a butcher's stall, proof that in Rome, business and home life were hopelessly intertwined. Feeling somewhat defeated, you decide to attempt the one job you think might be manageable, helping a produce seller. You approach a friendly-looking woman stacking figs. "Can I help?" you offer. She hands you a basket. "Sort these by size." Finally, something simple. You begin sorting. Large fig here, small fig there, medium fig. "Oh no, not like that," she says, swooping in. "Those are drying figs. These are fresh figs, and these are bruised figs, and these are for syrup." She points to each pile rapidly, like she's conducting an orchestra of fruit. You stare at your hands, now holding a fig with the fear of someone clutching a ticking bomb. You are not prepared for fig taxonomy. She sighs, takes the basket back and pats your shoulder. "You're sweet," she says, in the tone people use for lost puppies, "but you're not a worker." Ouch. Historians still argue whether most Romans viewed labour as dignified or simply necessary. But one thing is clear. Skill mattered, and you have none of it. You stroll on, trying to salvage a shred of confidence. You pass construction workers chiselling stone with rhythmic taps. You pass porters carrying amphorae. You even pass a man repairing a net, and you briefly consider offering help, before remembering your fig performance. Finally, you find a shady spot and lean against a column, defeated. Rome is loud. Rome is crowded. Rome is brutally hot. But Roman work life? That's the part that truly humbles you. You can't lift, carve, hammer, copy, stitch, or sort fruit properly. The city is full of skilled hands and fast minds. You are just trying to survive without embarrassing yourself further. But if you think work life is confusing, wait until you meet the Roman officials, because nothing, not even fermented fish or flying planks, prepares you for ancient bureaucracy. You take a long breath. Well, as long as the smell of fish sauce, sweat and dusty stone will allow, and push yourself away from the column. You might not be cut out for Roman labour, but surely you can at least walk through the city without incident. Surely things get easier from here. They do not, because you are about to meet Roman officials, and Roman officials are a very special category of chaos. You follow the crowd toward a wider street, noticing the shift in atmosphere. The chaos is still there, of course it is, but now it feels sharper, more deliberate. You pick up snippets of conversation about taxes, local disputes, and someone being fined for selling watered wine that was too watered. Romans have a lot of rules, but their enforcement varies depending on the day, the official, and perhaps the position of Jupiter in the sky. A mainstream historical fact, Rome ran on a complex system of magistrates, clerks, guards, aediles, and inspectors, each with specific duties that often overlapped. This overlap created confusion. Confusion created conflict. Conflict created paperwork. Well, waxwork. You turn a corner and nearly walk straight into a pair of lictors, tall, stern men carrying fasces, bundles of rods symbolizing state authority. Their expressions say, "Do not bump into us. Ever." You flatten yourself against the wall, trying to look very non-criminal. One lictor glances at your dusty tunic, sweaty face and uncertain posture. He frowns slightly. You offer a trembly smile. He looks away, satisfied that you are harmless, or too pathetic to arrest. Hard to tell. You slip past them, heart pounding. Farther down the street, a group of aediles, the city officials responsible for public order, stand near a stall inspecting weights and measures. One merchant argues that his scale is perfectly accurate. The aedile taps it, squints, and declares it questionably honest. The merchant protests loudly. The aedile responds with a fine. The merchant nearly explodes. You decide to mind your business. But that's when you catch an official's eye. A short, energetic man with an official-looking wax tablet waves you over. You look behind you, hoping he means someone else. He does not. "You?" he says. "Do you live in this district?" You freeze. Do you? You have no idea what district anything is. "Yes," you answer weakly. Then your landlord has not submitted this week's street cleaning contribution. You blink. He hasn't. The official thrusts the wax tablet toward you. "Name?" Panic spikes through your entire soul. Do you give your real name? A fake Roman name? A heroic gladiator name? You blurt out something vaguely Latin-sounding. He scratches it down with the speed of a man whose entire personality is bureaucratic efficiency. You tell your landlord, he says. He owes 3 sesterces. You nod vigorously, hoping he won't ask where your landlord lives, because your answer would be, "Up some stairs, I barely survived this morning." The official dismisses you with a flick of his stylus. You walk away quickly, praying no follow-up questions are coming. A quirky tidbit helps lighten your dread. Ancient Roman officials were known for their love of public scolding. Some even made minor rule violations into dramatic spectacles. One famous EDL reportedly lectured a man for an entire hour because he stored fish too close to a public walkway. You silently thank the gods you were not caught holding that questionable sausage earlier. Up ahead, you pass a checkpoint staffed by vigils, Rome's night watchmen who also functioned as firefighters and occasionally street enforcers. They're leaning against their equipment, chatting casually, but the moment someone looks suspicious, they become alert. Unfortunately, today that suspicious someone is you. One vigil squints at your sandals. "Citizen," he calls, "are those legal?" Your brain short-circuits. "My sandals?" "Yes," he says, stepping closer. "Some stalls are using unauthorized leather, counterfeit goods." You stare down at your sandals, the ones currently held together by courage and friction. "I bought them from a perfectly honest man." The vigil lifts a brow. "Where?" "In the, place with people." Great. Smooth. Absolutely convincing. He studies you for one terrifying second, then bursts out laughing. "Relax, I'm teasing." He claps your shoulder hard enough to rearrange your spine. "Stay out of trouble." You nod so fast your neck pops. As you flee the checkpoint, humiliation tingling across your face, you accidentally stumble straight into yet another official barricade, this time surrounding a man arguing vehemently with a tax collector. The collector has the hollow-eyed expression of someone who has explained the same rule 50 times and is ready to fling himself into the Tiber. The man being taxed insists his shop is not technically a shop, because he does not technically own it. His cousin does. The cousin insists he leased it to a friend. The friend insists he's just visiting. The tax collector scribbles furiously. Historians still argue whether tax evasion was a Roman sport or a Roman art form. Watching this knot of confusion, you suspect it was both. You back away before you get accidentally registered as supplementary cousin. Taking several deep breaths, you follow a quieter side street, only to discover a new threat. Patrolling urban cohorts, Rome's closest equivalent to police. These men walk in groups, scanning crowds with practiced confidence. One of them points at you. "You there?" he calls. You freeze. "Do you know the curfew hours for this district?" "Curfew? You didn't even know this district had hours?" He waits expectantly. Your mouth opens. Nothing comes out. A bead of sweat rolls down your spine. The officer studies you, sighs, and says, "Never mind. You don't look like trouble." You're starting to suspect not trouble is your only marketable skill in this city. As they move on, you slump against a wall, mentally exhausted. You've survived lictors, edels, vigils, tax collectors, and urban cohorts, all without being fined, detained, questioned further, or hilariously punished. But your relief is short-lived, because as you lift your head, you realize where your wandering has suddenly brought you. The Forum, Rome's beating heart, Rome's political powerhouse, Rome's busiest, loudest, most opinionated square. And navigating the Forum is like being dropped into a thunderstorm armed only with a soggy leaf. You swallow hard. Surviving Roman officials was bad enough. Surviving Roman politics? That's a whole new level of dangerous. You peel yourself off the wall, still rattled from your brush with Roman bureaucracy, and take a few tentative steps forward. A warm breeze kicks up dust along the street, and as it clears, you finally see the space opening before you, like a great stone valley. Columns rise like ancient trees, statues glint in the sun, marble buildings loom with authority. You've wandered straight into the Roman Forum, the pulsing, frantic, astonishing heart of the empire, and instantly you realize you have made a terrible mistake. Because if the streets felt overwhelming, the Forum hits like walking into a beehive wearing a tunic made of pollen. Noise erupts all around you, shouting politicians, arguing merchants, ambitious orators reciting speeches no one asked for. It's a constant swirl of sound and motion. People talk in quick bursts, interrupt each other, point dramatically, gesture wildly, and move with such purpose that you instinctively flatten yourself against a column just to avoid being trampled. A mainstream historical fact. The Forum wasn't just the political centre of Rome, it was also a marketplace, courthouse, gossip hub, religious centre, and social arena all in one. Everything happened here. Everything. And today it feels like all of Rome has shown up at once. You take a step forward and instantly regret it. A man in a white toga with a deep purple stripe, the mark of a senator, sweeps past you so quickly his shoulder smacks yours. Your breath catches. You whirl around to apologise, but he's already marching toward a cluster of fellow senators, all arguing intensely about something involving grain shipments and incompetent officials. A phrase you now deeply relate to. Before you can recover, a young man climbs onto a low plinth and begins loudly chanting poetry about virtue and honour. His voice echoes across the square. Half the crowd cheers him, the other half boos with equal enthusiasm. You stand frozen, wondering whether clapping is appropriate, or if that will accidentally align you with a political faction that gets exiled next week. You slide away from the poet, but as you do, you pass a group gathered around a speaker, delivering a fiery legal argument. He's sweating, gesturing, pacing, and throwing Latin insults with the energy of a man convinced a dramatic monologue will solve everything. His opponent, equally passionate, fires back with counter-arguments and scandalous accusations involving a missing goat. You have never seen court cases fought at this volume, or in this location, or with this many goat-related subplots. Historians still argue whether the Forum was more chaotic during political seasons or on ordinary business days. Based on what you're witnessing, everyday Rome was already functioning at maximum dramatic capacity. You attempt to slip through the crowd, but you're immediately blocked by two merchants arguing about counterfeit goods. One is waving a sandal, the other is waving a different sandal, insisting his is the original. A small audience has gathered. People love sandal drama, apparently. You duck away quickly before someone asks you for a legal opinion. Ahead, the Basilica Julia casts a massive shadow, one of the few patches of shade in the entire Forum. You make a beeline for it, longing for relief, but when you step inside, you find even more crowds. This basilica isn't a church, not in this period anyway. It's a law court. Multiple trials happen simultaneously inside, each louder and more theatrical than the last. To your left, a man is pleading his case with overblown emotion, repeatedly clutching his chest like he might faint. To your right, a woman is accusing her neighbour of stealing olive oil. Behind her, someone is claiming damages from a runaway goose. You stare at the goose. The goose stares back with chilling confidence. You decide leaving the basilica is the safest option. Back in the open air, you try to admire the architecture, the sweeping arches, the towering columns, the carved friezes depicting victories and gods and legends. It's beautiful. Overwhelming, but beautiful. And then your attention is violently pulled elsewhere. A crowd suddenly rushes toward the rostra, Rome's official speaker's platform. Someone important is about to address the public. You're swept along by the tide of bodies before you can resist. People pack together tightly. Elbows fly, toes are stepped on. At one point, someone's hair bun pokes your cheek. You don't complain. Complaints require oxygen you don't currently have. A man in a crisp toga raises his hands for silence. The crowd quiets, slightly. He begins to speak, his voice booming across the Forum. You recognize some words: trade, taxes, corruption, responsibility, the gods' displeasure. He sounds intense, passionate, dramatic enough to win several modern acting awards. And then he says something that sends the crowd into an uproar. You have no idea what it was. Half the people cheer, half roar angrily. One man next to you shouts, "Finally," with triumph. Another yells, "Scandal," in disgust. You try to stand neutrally, hoping no one expects you to have an opinion. But a woman turns to you suddenly and demands, "Well, what do you think about his proposal?" You freeze. Your brain empties. Your soul leaves your body. "It's bold," you offer. She nods vigorously. "Exactly. Bold." You sigh quietly in relief. Bold is always safe. The speech continues, growing more animated. Rome loves passion. Rome loves noise. Rome loves a good argument. And you love oxygen. This crowd is eating yours. You push your way free at last, stumbling toward a quieter corner of the forum beside a temple. You lean against its marble base, catching your breath. A few pigeons coo nearby. A dog naps in the shade, blissfully unaware of political turmoil. And for one moment, there is peace. But then, because Rome has a strict no peace allowed policy, a group of men bursts out of the nearby Senate House mid-debate. They gesture wildly, robes flapping, shouting phrases like treason, ridiculous, and my cousin is a fool. You flatten yourself against the temple, trying not to be swept into political crossfire. A quirky tidbit. Many senators held long meetings not because they loved discussion, but because leaving early was seen as weakness. You now understand why. Every exit looks like a battle. You finally slip away from the forum entirely, heart pounding, head buzzing with too many voices, and a newfound respect for anyone who navigated this political carnival daily without losing their mind. You survived crowds, scams, arguments, speeches, sandal disputes, goose litigation, and 2 near kidnappings by political movements you didn't understand. But unfortunately, your journey isn't calming down. Because as you wander down a quieter street, the city becomes still for just a moment. A temple stands ahead. Smoke rises, people gather, a priest chants softly, and suddenly, you realize you've stepped straight into the world of Roman religion, and you have no idea how not to offend every god simultaneously. You leave the political thunderstorm of the forum behind, stepping gratefully into a quieter street where the air feels different, calmer, smokier, more reverent. Up ahead, a temple rises, its wide steps glowing in the sunlight, its columns tall and solemn, its roofline carved with gods who look like they're judging everyone below, which they probably are. You pause, suddenly aware that you are entering sacred territory, and you have absolutely no idea what the rules are. Roman religion isn't a Sunday ritual or a private meditation. It's woven into everything: daily routines, government decisions, public ceremonies, farming, marriage, politics, even business deals. And the gods? They're everywhere. Watching, listening, sometimes judging. You swallow hard. Better not mess this up. The temple steps are bustling with activity. A priest in a white toga walks slowly across the platform, carrying a small bowl of incense. The sweet-smelling smoke curls upward, making the air shimmer. A group of worshippers line up with offerings: bread, fruit, small cakes, even flowers. You watch as each person approaches the altar, bows, and leaves their gift with practiced ease. You creep closer, heart pounding. Maybe you can follow their lead. Maybe you can look like you belong. You absolutely cannot. You hover awkwardly at the base of the stairs, glancing around to see if anyone notices your confusion. A couple of older women give you a quick once-over. They narrow their eyes in the universal expression of, "You're not from around here, are you?" You try to look respectful. You may actually look constipated. A mainstream historical fact: Roman worship was extremely ritualistic. Even the smallest ceremony had required gestures, words, and offerings. Doing something wrong could pollute the ritual, forcing the entire thing to restart from scratch. Priests took this very seriously. You take a cautious step up. Immediately, a small child, maybe 8 years old, bumps your hip and nearly sends you tumbling down the stairs. He darts past you, carrying a bunch of grapes for an offering. He shoots you a look like you're blocking important holy business. You apologize to him. Yes, to the child. You reach the top and watch how others approach the altar. Bow head, extend arms, offer item, whisper a prayer, step back. Simple, right? Except you have nothing to offer, and you don't know any prayers, and your arms suddenly feel like overcooked noodles. A kindly older man nearby notices your hesitation. "First time?" he asks with a smile. You nod meekly. He reaches into his basket and hands you a small fig. "Here," he says, "the gods won't mind a borrowed offering." You thank him, relieved beyond measure. He gestures for you to follow. You join the line, clutching the fig like it's a sacred relic. When your turn arrives, you step forward, bow your head, and present the fruit. The priest accepts it silently. You whisper the most neutral, least offensive prayer you can think of. Thank you. For today?" A few nearby worshippers glance at you strangely. Maybe because your prayer was vague. Maybe because you forgot the part where people usually ask the gods for things. You quickly step back, cheeks burning. A quirky tidbit. Romans were deeply transactional with their gods. You gave an offering, and the god was expected to return a favour. You just offered a fig and asked for nothing. The gods are probably confused. As you leave the altar, a faint bell rings. A priest raises his hands, the crowd quiets. A ritual is beginning. You try to slip away, but curiosity stops you. The priest chants in rhythmic Latin, calling upon the deity of the temple, likely Jupiter, Juno, or Minerva, though you're too scared to check the statue. Smoke rises. A goat bleats somewhere behind the altar. Your stomach twists. Please don't let this turn into a sacrifice scene. You're emotionally fragile. Then, man lights a bundle of incense and places it into a bronze bowl. The smoke billows upward, filling the temple portico. The priest sprinkles wine over the altar, and the crowd murmurs their response. It's solemn, powerful, strangely beautiful. You try to copy the murmuring. It comes out as something between a hum and a cough. A woman beside you pats your arm sympathetically. She probably thinks you're very devout, or mildly possessed. Historians still argue whether Roman religion was more about genuine belief or social obligation. Watching this ritual, you suspect it was both. People seem sincerely moved, but they're also watching each other, making sure the gestures are precise, the response is correct, the ritual pure. The ceremony ends with a communal gesture. You don't know what it means, so you half guess it, half wing it, half hope no one notices. A man behind you clears his throat pointedly. You definitely messed something up. You bow apologetically to no one in particular and shuffle down the temple steps. But as you reach the street again, a lightness settles over you. Your offering was accepted. You avoided offending the gods. You did not get sacrificed. All in all, a successful religious outing. You walk down the street feeling proud, peaceful even. But the peace lasts exactly 5 seconds, because up ahead, the noise returns. Laughter, clapping, cheering. A crowd is forming around a group of street performers juggling knives, dancing on ropes, and shouting comedic insults at anyone who passes. Roman entertainment is loud, chaotic, and, as you're about to learn, full of hidden dangers. You survived the temple, but now you're walking straight into the Roman afternoon, and the city's wild, unpredictable amusements. Good luck. You step away from the temple, feeling spiritually intact, miracle enough, and follow the rising noise ahead. Whatever's happening is loud, energetic, and unmistakably Roman. As you turn the corner, you find the source, a busy intersection transformed into an impromptu stage. Street performers, the ancient world's original content creators, have gathered, and a crowd is already forming around them. You hesitate at the edge. The air here is different, lighter, charged with excitement, laughter, and the vague scent of spilled wine. After all the stress of temples, politics, and bureaucracy, part of you hopes this will finally be something fun. It will be fun. It will also be dangerous. Welcome to Roman afternoon entertainment. A tall man steps forward with 3 bronze-handled knives, twirls them dramatically, and tosses them into the air. The crowd cheers. You instinctively step back, because your survival instincts are still functional. The knives spin through sunlight, glinting like tiny swords, and you're suddenly aware of how close the performer is to the front row. People trust him not to mess up. You are not so trusting. A mainstream historical fact. Street performers, histrions, jugglers, acrobats, fire breathers, were wildly popular in Rome, drawing crowds wherever they appeared. They performed risky acts for coins and applause, often in whatever open space they could claim for a few minutes. The knife juggler finishes with a flourish. The crowd erupts in applause. He bows deeply, then points to you specifically, and says something that makes everyone laugh. You have no idea what he said, but judging from the giggles, it was a joke at your expense. Welcome to being part of the show. You force a polite smile and slink farther back. Next, a pair of acrobats, lean, nimble, and wearing short tunics, begin contorting their bodies in ways that defy human logic. They stack themselves into a wobbling human tower, then collapse into a roll that nearly trips a man carrying amphorae. The man curses. The crowd cheers louder. Rome loves chaos. Then an older performer steps forward, a storyteller with wild hair and theatrically wide eyes. He carries a tambourine and bangs it to draw the crowd closer. You drift forward too, curiosity outweighing caution. For now. He begins telling a comedic tale about a forgetful senator who tried to bribe the wrong official, accidentally offended a god, and then spent an entire day apologizing to statues. The crowd roars with laughter. You laugh too, partly because the story is genuinely funny, and partly because laughing helps you blend in. The performer catches your reaction and nods approvingly. For a brief, magical moment, you feel like you're actually fitting in. But then a pickpocket brushes past you. You feel the slightest tug on your tunic. You whirl around instinctively, too fast, too suspicious, and catch the eye of a scrawny teenager who freezes in place. You glare. He smirks. Then he vanishes into the crowd like a very talented rat. You check your pockets. Miraculously, your last coin is still there. A quirky tidbit. Street performances were prime hunting grounds for thieves. People watching jugglers rarely watch their own belongings. You mentally pat yourself on the back for still possessing your stuff. Then the atmosphere shifts again. A fortune teller, wrapped in colourful fabrics, carrying a basket of small bones and charms, steps forward. She spreads a cloth on the ground and speaks in a captivating whisper. People gather around her, eager for predictions. You watch as she tosses the bones, studies their arrangement, and tells a nervous man he will avoid disaster today if he listens carefully. He pales. You wonder what disaster he was already anticipating. She catches your eye next. She motions you forward with a bony finger. Oh no, absolutely not. You shake your head politely. She chuckles knowingly, the way fortune tellers do when they want you to think they understand your soul. You back away slowly. You escape toward the far side of the crowd, where a trio of musicians plays a lively tune on flutes and drums. Children dance, adults clap, even a dog happily howls along. It's wholesome, until a drunk man attempts to join the dancers and spins so wildly he wipes out 3 people. You backpedal to avoid becoming victim number 4. Historians still argue whether Roman street entertainment was more dangerous because of the performers or the audience. Judging by the collapse you just witnessed, the answer is both. You try to move away again, but the knife juggler suddenly leaps back into view, this time setting his knives on fire. Fire, actual flames. You instinctively duck. The crowd cheers with unearned confidence. Romans don't fear danger nearly as much as they should. The juggler tosses the flaming knives high, too high. One spins dangerously close to the wooden facade of a shop. A woman gasps. The knife drops, hits the ground, and miraculously extinguishes itself on impact. Everyone roars with approval. You simply stare in disbelief. You realize something important. Rome doesn't manage chaos. Rome celebrates it. And unfortunately for you, the performance isn't over yet. Because now a pair of animal trainers arrive with a performing monkey wearing a tiny tunic. The monkey grabs a stick, pokes a man in the leg and steals a fig from his hand. The man shrieks. The monkey screeches triumphantly. The crowd loves it. Then the monkey lunges toward you. You leap backwards so fast you nearly trigger a domino effect among the spectators behind you. The monkey chases you 2 steps before its handler scoops it up and apologizes, barely. The monkey glares at you with betrayal in its eyes. You glare back, equally betrayed. Your heart is pounding, your tunic is disheveled, your dignity is somewhere back on the street, probably being taken by the pickpocket. You step away from the performers completely, trying to calm your pulse. You remind yourself that Rome's amusements are beloved, ancient traditions. They're supposed to bring joy, levity, laughter. They're not supposed to feel like an obstacle course. But as you move down the street, still catching your breath, you notice a different kind of crowd gathering farther ahead. Bigger, louder, more intense. And then you realize where the city is pulling you next. The gladiator crowd. The Colosseum's orbit. The beating heart of Roman spectacle. Today, you won't just smell the blood and dust. You'll be swept straight into the fever of it. Hope your nerves are ready. You follow the rising roar, not the cheerful laughter of street performers, but something deeper, heavier, vibrating through the stones beneath your sandals. It's the kind of sound thousands of throats make when anticipation mixes with adrenaline. You feel it before you fully hear it. Your chest tightens, and then you see where the noise is coming from. A crowd floods the street like a river of bodies, all pushing toward a massive archway leading toward Rome's most infamous arena. You're still far from the Colosseum itself, but even its distant silhouette is unmistakable. Curved, towering, carved with arches like the ribs of some ancient stone beast. You swallow hard. You didn't plan to come here, but Rome pulls people the way storms pull ships. You're getting swept in whether you like it or not. The crowds thicken as you approach. Everyone is moving, excited, loud, animated in that uniquely Roman way that suggests danger is half the fun. Vendors shout above the frenzy, selling cushions, wine, bread, roasted nuts, and, disturbingly, small wooden figurines shaped like the gladiators competing today. A mainstream historical fact. Gladiator combat wasn't an everyday event, but when games were announced, the entire city buzzed with electricity. Even people who claimed to hate violence somehow ended up here, just to see what all the fuss is about. You try edging to the side to avoid being sucked fully into the stream, but it's too late. The crowd shifts, bodies press in from all directions, and suddenly you're moving whether your feet agree or not. You're carried forward like a leaf in a river. Someone behind you shoves. Someone in front stops abruptly. You pinball between them. A man to your left sloshes wine on your sleeve. A woman to your right waves a small wooden sword, reenacting an imaginary duel. You duck instinctively. "Which school is fighting today?" someone shouts. "I heard the Thracians," another yells. "No, the Myrmilones," a third insists loudly. A fourth interrupts. "You're all wrong." They immediately begin arguing, loudly, passionately, with deep personal offence. You decide not to join this debate. A merchant steps directly into your path, hawking strips of spiced meat on skewers. "For strength," he claims. "Eat like a gladiator." The skewer looks undercooked. You politely decline. You finally spot a small gap between two marble pillars and attempt to slip through for a breather, but a trio of youths blocks the way, chanting in support of a specific gladiator whose name you can't quite catch. They're wearing matching colours like modern sports fans, and one carries a banner with a badly painted lion on it. You realise, horrified, that Roman fan culture is just as intense as modern sports culture, except these teams involve actual life or death outcomes. A quirky tidbit. Some wealthy Romans bet absurd amounts of money on gladiators, and some even formed unofficial fan clubs. Fights broke out between rival supporters. The arena wasn't the only place people bled. The crowd continues pushing you deeper into the frenzy. A man beside you grabs your shoulder. "First time?" he asks, eyes gleaming with excitement. You nod stiffly. He grins like this is excellent news. "You're in for a show. If the gods favour us, someone will lose a hand today." You give him a look of absolute horror. He laughs heartily. "Don't worry," he says. "Most of them survive." Most. You consider escaping again, but the tide of bodies sweeps you toward a massive open plaza outside the Colosseum, where even more people gather. Merchants, gamblers, food sellers, musicians, pickpockets, lots of pickpockets, and soldiers keeping a watchful eye on the brewing chaos. One soldier raises his voice above the crowd. "Move in an orderly fashion!" The crowd does the opposite immediately. A small fight breaks out between two gamblers arguing over odds. Someone shouts for the vigils. Someone else shouts that the vigils owe him money. A dog barks. A baby cries. A street clown honks a horn-like instrument because of course he does. You stand in the middle of it all, overwhelmed, pressed against a wall, feeling the raw pulse of Roman entertainment culture. You don't go inside. The pressure of the crowd prevents it, but you do get close enough to feel the sound from within the arena rumble through your bones. A distant roar rises, massive, layered, frightening. It's not like hearing a crowd at a concert. It's like hearing a living creature breathe. Someone near you gasps, then cheers. Someone else groans. Someone throws their hands in the air triumphantly. You look toward the arena entrance. A group of gladiators is marching in, heavily armed, muscled, focused. They don't look like performers. They look like soldiers marching into something unavoidable. One glances your way, just for a second. His expression is unreadable. Part resignation, part determination, part something ancient and harsh. You shiver. Modern, you cannot fathom the weight of what he's walking into. Historians still argue whether gladiators were more like athletes or prisoners. Watching them now, you suspect the truth is messier. Some chose the arena, some were forced, but all faced risks you can barely imagine. As the gladiators disappear inside, the crowd roars again, vibrating through the stones beneath your feet. You step back, suddenly dizzy. Between the heat, the noise, the crush of bodies, and the grim reality of what's happening inside the arena, your nerves feel stretched thin. You need out. You begin pushing your way through the crowd, apologizing, sidestepping, ducking, practically crawling at one point, until finally you break free onto a quieter street, heart thumping. The silence is jarring, your ears ring, and you think for one hopeful moment that this quieter street will finally give you a break. You are wrong. Because as you walk farther, the noise softens but the tension sharpens. You've stumbled into a wealthy district, where homes are larger, walls higher, and the people much more guarded. And you're about to accidentally enter elite territory, where the wrong glance can get you questioned, and the wrong move can get you removed. You slow your pace as you wander into a quieter, cleaner street. Too clean, actually. The stones here are smoother. The air smells less of garum and more of imported perfume. The buildings rise taller, their walls freshly plastered and painted in warm reds and yellows. Balconies drip with vines. Bronze lamps gleam in the sunlight. This isn't just a different neighborhood. This is elite territory, and you, dusty, sweaty, visibly overwhelmed, walk through it like a stray cat in a jewelry store. You take a cautious step forward, trying to adjust your posture. Maybe if you stand up straighter, you'll blend in. Maybe if you smooth your tunic, people won't notice you're a professional outsider. You make an effort. It fails. You still look like someone who got lost on the way to the cheap bread stalls. Elite Rome has its own rhythm, and you can feel it instantly. Servants move briskly with baskets of fruit and amphorae of wine. Wealthy women stroll behind veiled litters, escorted by attendants. Men in crisp white togas converse in low, measured tones, voices calm, refined, utterly unlike the chaos of the forum or the marketplace. You take it all in, and then immediately panic, because someone is staring at you. A tall doorman stands guard at the entrance of a villa. Broad shoulders, stern expression, and arms crossed with the confidence of a man whose job description includes intimidate absolutely everyone. He watches you like you might steal the marble beneath your sandals. You try not to look suspicious, which unfortunately makes you look even more suspicious. You nod awkwardly as you pass. His expression does not soften. A mainstream historical fact. Roman elites used ostiari, door guards, to control entrances and intimidate undesirables. You, today, are definitely classified as undesirable. You speed up, hoping to escape the doorman's glare, but the next villa has 2 guards, and the next has 3. Some sit on stools, sharpening small knives. Others lean, casually against walls, looking bored but dangerous. You feel every hair on your arms prickle. Then you make your first mistake. You look through an open doorway. Just a glance, half a second, at the courtyard inside. A stunning mosaic glitters on the ground. Statues line the walls. A servant is pouring wine from a jar that probably costs more than your life. A woman lounging inside notices your curiosity. She raises an eyebrow, the Roman universal signal for, "How dare you!" Her attendant steps toward the doorway in warning. You snap your head forward and walk faster. You are now sweating for reasons unrelated to heat. The street bends, and a long line of clients stands outside another impressive home, each holding a small gift or scroll. They wait politely for their morning audience with the wealthy patron inside. Patronage is everything in Rome. Your survival, your reputation, your income. As you try to pass, one of the clients mistakes you for someone else. He turns and whispers, "Did you bring the petition?" You blink at him, panic bubbling in your chest. No?" He frowns so deeply it could be immortalized in marble. You flee. Historians still argue whether these client-patron gatherings were genuine relationships or shallow performances. Judging by the tension here, the answer is both, and neither is your business. You do not want to be mistaken for someone presenting a land dispute today. You turn the next corner hoping for escape, and accidentally wander into the path of an elite litter procession. 4 strong servants carry a decorated litter, curtains swaying. Inside sits a noblewoman with elaborate braids woven with gold thread. She looks absolutely regal, absolutely untouchable, and absolutely annoyed that you are standing where she wants to be. You scramble to the wall. Her servant shoots you a look best translated as, "Move again, and you will regret the next few seconds of your life." You press yourself flat, heart pounding until the procession passes. You exhale shakily. Rome's lower classes were loud. Rome's officials were frightening. But Rome's elite? They're terrifying in an entirely different way. Quiet, powerful, watchful. You keep walking, shoulders tight. Then you make your second mistake. You linger in front of a villa with an open gate. Something inside catches your eye. Not the luxury, not the columns, not the servants sweeping the courtyard, but the food. A table is set with fruit, bread, small pastries, and a bowl of olives glistening in sunlight. You haven't eaten in a while. Your stomach makes a desperate little sound. A guard steps up, blocking your view. "Move along," he says flatly. You move along. Then, at the end of the street, you stumble into a small cluster of people whispering intensely. You pause, not because you want to eavesdrop, but because you accidentally walked too close. You hear fragments. "The senator's nephew," "caught with forged," "documents," "possible exile," "keep your voice down." You immediately decide you heard nothing. You saw nothing. The gods can strike you down if you're lying. You zip your lips and walk away faster than you've moved all day. A quirky tidbit. Elite households were hotbeds of gossip, intrigue, and scandal. Servants carried information between homes like bees carrying pollen. Except instead of flowers, the pollen was political dirt. And you want absolutely no part of that ecosystem. You finally reach the end of the elite district, a shaded archway dividing rich Rome from the rest of humanity. You slip under it, nearly collapsing with relief. Then a new sound reaches your ears. A low, unsettling hum. A whisper of movement. Footsteps behind you. A dog barking somewhere. A drunk shouting in the distance. And suddenly the truth hits you like a falling amphora. Night is coming. You survived crowds. You survived baths. You survived heat, food stalls, officials, politics, and wealthy egos. But Rome after dark is something else entirely. No lights, minimal guards, no rules, just shadows, and countless reasons you wouldn't survive a single night here. You step out from the elite district just as the sun begins dipping lower in the sky. The warm gold of late afternoon softens the sharp edges of the city, but it also casts long, stretching shadows across the streets. Rome looks different now, less vibrant, more unpredictable. The daytime crowds thin, the heat fades, and an unsettling hush settles over the city. You've survived most of the day, but nighttime in Imperial Rome, that's when the real danger begins. You walk cautiously, feeling the shift in atmosphere. Vendors pack up their stalls, shopkeepers pull wooden shutters across their storefronts. The bustle of the city reorganizes itself. The friendly chaos of children, dogs, and daytime hustle fades, replaced by something tighter, sharper, uneasy. A mainstream historical fact. Ancient Rome was notoriously unsafe after sunset. There were no street lamps, just a few flickering torches near major buildings, and very few patrols. Even wealthy Romans avoided night travel unless absolutely necessary. You're not wealthy. You're also not ready for what's coming. Your footsteps echo slightly as you move down a narrow lane. Shadows spider across the ground, thrown by twisted balconies and uneven rooftops. Two men pass you quickly, whispering urgently, glancing over their shoulders. You pretend not to notice. Rome's nighttime rule number 1. Mind your own business. A dog growls from somewhere behind you. You don't turn around. You hug the walls, staying in what little light remains. The last rays of sun slip away, and with them, most of your confidence. Ahead, a group of vigils, Rome's night watchmen, stand near a fountain. They wear simple tunics, carry buckets and poles, and speak in low, bored voices. They look tired, overworked, underpaid, and definitely not enthusiastic about patrolling the darker sections of the city. One notices you. He squints. You heading home? You nod too quickly. Then hurry, he says, before the wrong sort finds you. Not comforting. You keep walking. As dusk deepens, the noises change. Instead of merchants calling out deals, you hear clattering shutters, muttered curses, a distant scuffle, the creak of a cartwheel that shouldn't be out this late. Someone laughs drunkenly around the corner. Someone else shouts angrily a moment later. You reach a crossroads. A torch flickers weakly on a metal bracket. It barely illuminates anything. You choose the brighter-looking path, though brighter here means less pitch black. A woman hurries past with her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. A man follows her. She speeds up. He speeds up. You decide turning around is the best plan. Historians still argue whether the average Roman feared criminals more than supernatural beings at night. Judging by the sounds behind you, soft footsteps, hushed whispers, the fear was probably equal. You press forward into a slightly wider street, trying to appear confident. Rome, however, can smell fear. A hand brushes your tunic. You spin around. A boy, maybe 12, stares up at you with wide eyes. "Got a coin, sir?" he asks, though his hand is already suspiciously close to your waist. You quickly step back, clutching your coin pouch. "No," you say firmly. He shrugs, vanishes into the shadows like steam. You check your pouch anyway. Still there. Barely. The darkness thickens. The torchlight flickers. You hear footsteps again, this time heavier. You push yourself toward a more populated area, if you can find one. Rome is a maze, and in dim light everything blurs into the same set of alleys and columns. You turn a corner and bump, hard, into a man carrying a clay jug. It slips from his hands, shatters on the ground, and wine splashes across your feet. He shouts something unintelligible and grabs your arm. "I'm sorry," you blurt. He squeezes tighter. You feel a spike of panic. Another man steps out of the shadows, broad, scarred, eyes sharp. He looks you up and down like he's assessing the potential profit of shaking you upside down. You take a slow step backward, ready to sprint. Then someone else appears. A woman steps up, middle-aged, fierce, carrying a basket of herbs that smells strongly of mint and panic. She slaps the man's wrist with surprising confidence. "Leave him," she snaps. "He's not worth the trouble." The man grumbles but releases you. His larger friend stares for a beat longer, then fades into the darkness like he was never there. You exhale shakily. "You don't belong here," the woman says, adjusting her basket. "Stick to busy streets, if you can find any." You thank her, voice cracking slightly. She nods once and walks away without another word. You hurry on, nerves buzzing. A quirky tidbit. Some Romans carried tiny oil lamps at night, but the light barely helped. Others hired torchbearers, young men paid to walk ahead and illuminate the path. You wish desperately you had hired one of those. You finally emerge onto a wider road, still dark but slightly safer. A tavern glows softly nearby, laughter spilling out into the street. Taverns at night are double-edged, safe from the shadows but filled with drunk strangers who might decide you look punchable. Still, you linger near the doorway, grateful for the light. Inside, patrons argue loudly about chariot races, always chariot races. One man pounds the table, insisting the blue faction cheats. Another swears by the greens. You accidentally make eye contact with a man who looks ready to debate you into the afterlife. You look away fast. You step back onto the street. Rome grows quieter still. The sky purples. Torches gutter. The shadows deepen. Somewhere behind you, a scream pierces the night, but brief, quickly muffled. You freeze. Your breath catches. The vigils are nowhere in sight. You walk faster. Your heart thunders. Every shadow feels alive. Every corner feels dangerous. Every sound feels like a warning. Rome is magnificent by day. Rome is merciless by night. By the time you reach the edge of a slightly safer district, your nerves are wrecked. Your body is exhausted. Your coin pouch is somehow still intact. Small victories, but you're not done yet. Because now, with darkness fully settled, one question rises. Your heart is still thudding from the ordeal in the shadows as you finally step into a quieter, better-lit street. Better lit, of course, meaning one sputtering torch instead of zero. Still, after the near-mugging, Roman nighttime feels a fraction less hostile here. The smells shift again. Less fear, more food. Your stomach growls loudly. Right. Dinner. The final boss of your already chaotic day. In Imperial Rome, meals weren't peaceful, candlelit experiences. They were social whirlwinds, tavern pandemonium, or street stall gambles that made lunch look like fine dining, and you, exhausted as you are, must now find something edible without slipping into a bad situation. You follow the smell of cooked meat and warm bread until you reach a cluster of popinae, the ancient equivalent of casual restaurants, taverns, and chaotic debate arenas rolled into one. Their open counters glow with lamplight, steam rising from clay pots. Laughter spills into the street, mixed with shouts, clattering dishes, and someone loudly insisting he could beat a gladiator if the gods granted him one good night's sleep. You peek inside the nearest doorway. The room is dim, smoky, and buzzing with conversation. Men crowd around wooden tables. A woman pours wine into mismatched cups. Someone is roasting a small bird on a skewer near the hearth. It all smells surprisingly promising until you notice the floor. It glistens with spilled wine, oil, and something that looks like a distant cousin of mud, but absolutely is not mud. You step back instinctively. A mainstream historical fact. Popinay were infamous for questionable hygiene and rowdy patrons, especially after dark. Fights broke out regularly. Some taverns even banned certain chariot fan groups because their arguments turned into full brawls. You decide to try your luck at the next place. This one is smaller, quieter. A single lantern hangs near the entrance, casting warm light over bowls of lentil stew, olives, cheese, bread, and roasted nuts. The tavern keeper, a stout man with thick eyebrows, eyes you up and down but doesn't shoo you away. Good sign. You approach timidly. "Food?" you ask, hoping that single word communicates everything. He grunts and gestures to a large pot. Steam rises from it in gentle curls. Lentil stew, simple, safe. You exhale with relief. You hand over a coin, and he fills a shallow bowl. You take a cautious sip. It's warm, earthy, comforting. Your entire body nearly melts with gratitude. After the day you've had, lentils taste like luxury. You finish half the bowl before the first sign of trouble appears. A group of men enters, loud, boisterous, and already drunk. Their tunics are stained, their sandals dusty, and their voices so strong you're convinced they've spent the last hour shouting at the moon. They shove each other jokingly, but the kind of joking that's one insult away from a fight. You lower your bowl, quietly planning an exit. One man slams onto the bench beside you, jostling your elbow. "You," he says cheerfully. "You look new." "Uh-oh," you nod politely. "Where you from?" he asks. Your brain scrambles. Rome? No, too risky. Greece? Too accent-based. Gaul? Too intimidating. You blurt the first neutral location that pops into your head. I live? On the other side of the river?" He narrows his eyes, studying you. You sweat. Then he slaps your back so hard you almost faceplant into your lentils. "Good enough," he bellows. "Drinks for my friend." Your soul briefly leaves your body. The tavern keeper pours a cup of wine so strong you smell it from 2 feet away. A quirky tidbit. Romans watered their wine, but taverns were notorious for adjusting the ratio depending on how much profit they wanted. Tonight, that ratio appears to be 90% wine, 10% courage. You raise the cup politely, pretending to sip. The man beside you chugs his like it's survival juice. Another joins in. They start arguing about which legion has the best engineers. The debate escalates. Voices rise, a cup flies, someone ducks, a table creaks dangerously. You decide this is your exit cue. The tavern keeper sees your bowl still half full and shrugs. "Take it," he says. "Just return the bowl." You nod, step outside, clutching your food, and breathe deeply. Freshish air, relative safety. Rome's nighttime tension still lingers, but the tavern chaos is behind you, for now. You sit on a low stone ledge near a small shrine, finishing your lentils in peace. People pass by quietly, workers heading home, lovers whispering, a musician carrying a flute, a baker delivering warm loaves for the early morning. Then you hear a distant commotion, raised voices, fast footsteps, something breaking. You tense. A group of rowdy tavern patrons spills out onto the street from the place you just left, shoving and shouting. One brandishes a broken cup like a weapon, another swings wildly at the air, a third laughs. Like this is all part of the fun. You shove the last of your stew into your mouth and retreat into the shadows. They don't notice you. They're too focused on arguing about who insulted whose mother's olive oil recipe. Historians still argue whether taverns were more dangerous than the streets or the other way around. Tonight the answer is obvious. They're equally disastrous. Once the chaos moves on, you step back into the open, wiping lentil residue from your chin. You survived dinner. Barely. But now the air is shifting again. Not with danger, but with something grimier, earthier, more honest. Because dinner may be done, but the city still hasn't shown you its dirtiest truth. You're about to confront Roman hygiene, the myths, the realities, the smells, and the very questionable daily practices that will make you long for modern plumbing with a fierce, spiritual intensity. And trust me, you're not ready. You set your empty bowl on a small ledge, stretch your aching shoulders, and take a deep breath, immediately regretting it, because the evening air carries a ripe, unmistakable smell. Not food, not smoke, something earthier. You cough lightly, waving your hand in front of your face. For a moment you wonder if something nearby has died. Then you remember you're in ancient Rome, and hygiene, real, reliable, modern hygiene, is not a thing here. You brace yourself and continue walking. The street dips slightly, collecting runoff from the surrounding alleys. You step carefully around the little stream trickling down the centre, because you know, that's not clean water. Rome's drainage system is impressive in design, but in practice, it's a glorified open sewer. People empty chamber pots out windows, pour greasy kitchen scraps onto the stones, and toss who knows what into the street after dark. You sidestep a suspicious puddle with all the grace of someone avoiding a trap in an adventure movie. A mainstream historical fact: ancient Rome had public latrines and an advanced aqueduct system, but sanitation relied heavily on communal habits, and those habits varied a lot. As you continue down the narrow lane, you see one of the Rome's public latrines tucked between two buildings. A man exits just as you approach, shaking his hands as though he's just survived a traumatic event. You peer inside. You shouldn't, but you do. Dozens of stone seats line the room. No dividers, no privacy, just long benches with keyhole-shaped openings. People sit side by side, chatting casually like they're in a coffee shop. The floor is wet, the walls are damp, and a small stream trickles beneath the seats, flushing waste into the sewer system. Ingenious engineering. Terrible experience. A man inside waves a sponge on a stick. You recoil, because you know what that is. A tersorium. Rome's version of toilet paper, communal, shared, rinsed in a bucket of vaguely questionable water between uses. You make a mental note to do absolutely anything necessary to avoid needing a latrine tonight. You move along quickly, breathing shallowly as you walk. But the city offers no relief. A wool merchant rinses sheepskins in the street gutter. A fish seller dumps a bucket of water that smells like Poseidon's trash bin. A child chases a stray dog, both equally filthy. The smells swirl together in a way your modern immune system finds deeply offensive. You pass a bathhouse worker hauling out a massive tub of used bath water. It sloshes across the stones, and you jump back to avoid the tidal wave of sweat, oil, dirt, and yesterday's exfoliated regrets. The worker shrugs. The street will drink. He says, you decide never to walk barefoot in this city. Ever. Historians still argue whether Romans were dirty by ancient standards, or simply victims of population density. Many elements of Roman hygiene, like daily baths, were advanced. But the streets tell a different story. As you continue walking, your nose adjusts slightly, not comfortably, but enough to function. You even start noticing patterns in the smells: bread and wine near taverns, fish and brine near markets, smoke and oil near smithies, sweat and tannins near leather workshops, garbage everywhere. Then you enter a slightly more open street and spot a fuller's shop. Oh no, not the fuller's shop. Fullers clean wool using a mixture of clay, water, and urine. Lots of urine, collected from jars placed along the streets. People relieve themselves into the jars as they pass. The fullers use it. You glance inside the shop and instantly regret it. Men stomp wool with bare legs in large vats, the smell so powerful it could bend metal. You clutch your tunic to your face and stumble away as fast as your dignity allows. You turn the corner and nearly collide with a group of women carrying baskets of laundry. They head toward a fountain, chatting as they scrub cloth with scented oils. Their clothes look bright and clean, the fabrics lightly perfumed. You inhale deeply. Finally, something pleasant. One woman gives you a sympathetic smile when she sees your traumatized expression. First time passing the Fullers? She asks. You nod. Everyone laughs gently, with the knowing tone of people who long ago accepted that their city smells like a combination of glory and garbage. You move on, your nose still burning but your spirits slightly lifted. You even start appreciating the little things, the cool night breeze shifting between alleyways, the flicker of oil lamps in windows, The distant hum of evening conversations, the faint sweetness of incense drifting from a street shrine. Rome is filthy, yes, astoundingly so, but it's also alive, pulsing with layers of scent that tell the story of its people. You're exhausted, but something about this chaotic sensory overload feels oddly grounding, humbling, real. Just as your nose begins forgiving the city, a man empties a chamber pot from a second-floor window. He shouts something like, "Watch out below," but you hear it too late. You leap sideways with supernatural reflexes, dodging the splash by inches. A woman nearby cackles. "Quick learner," she says. "Most newcomers get soaked their first day." You bow politely, acknowledging your near-miss victory. As you continue on, you realise the smell and filth aren't the worst part of Roman hygiene. It's the noise, because even though the city is preparing for sleep, the city itself never actually sleeps, and you're about to learn exactly how impossible it will be to rest tonight. You rub your face with both hands, part exhaustion, part disbelief, and continue down the dim street. The smells of Rome fade slightly as the breeze shifts, but another problem now makes itself known with growing certainty. It's getting late. You're exhausted, and you have no idea where you're supposed to sleep tonight. A reasonable person might assume the city quiets down at night, that people settle in, get comfortable, drift off peacefully. Not Rome. Rome at night is like a great, restless creature, snoring, muttering, stomping, hiccuping, arguing, praying, singing, clattering, and occasionally throwing things. The city doesn't sleep. It negotiates with sleep, badly. You return to your insular district determined to find your building. You remember the general direction, thank the gods for muscle memory, and make your way through a network of alleys that all look identical in the dark. A pair of stray dogs trot past you. One carries something in its mouth you refuse to identify. A man snores loudly on a bench, clutching an empty wine cup. A woman leans out her window shouting at someone across the street. Her voice echoes like she's summoning Mars himself. So far, so Roman. You turn the next corner and almost trip over a group of musicians practicing quietly. Well, quietly in the Roman sense, meaning loudly but not drunk loud. A flute squeaks. A drum thumps repeatedly. Someone strums a lute with the enthusiasm of a man who has never actually played a lute. You give them a polite nod and move on. The street narrows as you enter the residential area. Lamps flicker weakly in windows, casting long, wobbly shadows. Children giggle somewhere above you. A couple argues passionately on a balcony. A man coughs so violently you briefly consider checking if he's okay. But this is Rome. Coughing is a communal soundtrack. At last you spot the rickety outline of your insula. You sigh with relief, climb the uneven stairs, one careful step at a time, and reach your room. It's dark, hot, and smells faintly of old straw. But at this point, you'd sleep on the floor of a fish market if it meant resting. You collapse onto your straw-stuffed mattress, and that's when you learn the cruelest truth of Rome. You will not be sleeping tonight. Not because you aren't tired, not because you aren't comfortable. You aren't, but that's beside the point. No, because Rome is loud. Very, very loud. A mainstream historical fact. Ancient writers complained constantly that the city was too noisy to sleep. Between carts, vendors, drunks, dogs, musicians, night workers, and random chaos, Rome's soundscape was legendary. You lie back, staring at the ceiling, listening. Below you, someone is pounding dough in a kitchen. Above you, someone drops a jug. It shatters. They swear creatively. Next door, a baby starts crying. Across the courtyard, a man is practicing a monologue, loudly. Maybe for the law courts, maybe for fun, who knows? Group of teens runs down the street laughing and shouting. Someone's donkey brays like it's confessing sins. Then the late-night arguments begin. A couple next door starts an all-out domestic opera. You hear every word, even the parts you wish you couldn't. On the street, drunk men debate politics at full volume, slurring when they reach the names of famous generals. One loudly insists Caesar was a genius. Another insists he was overrated. You silently beg them both to go home. You turn onto your side, trying to shut it out, but the wall is thin, practically theatrical curtains pretending to be architecture. Every sound vibrates through your skull. Then you hear footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, slow, Ominous. Someone stops at your door. You freeze. A voice mutters, "Wrong floor," and the footsteps continue upward. You exhale shakily. Not 2 minutes later, you smell smoke. Panic leaps into your chest. Fire is the greatest nightmare of anyone living in a Roman insula. You sit up. Your eyes widen. Then you realize it's not a building fire. It's just your downstairs neighbor cooking something extremely burnt. You lie back down, heart racing. A quirky tidbit. Insular fires were so common that landlords sometimes refused to repair them, simply building new ones instead. The city burned often, and people accepted the risk with a shrug you absolutely do not share. The noise continues. Far away, a wagon rattles over stone, illegally, but enforcement is lax tonight. Someone plays a flute badly enough to offend the gods. Dogs bark. A woman sings a lullaby. Someone drops a pot. Someone else drops a second pot. People laugh. People cry. Someone vomits loudly and unapologetically. A cat knocks something over. A rooster decides it's morning. It isn't. Hours pass, slowly, painfully, while you drift between exhaustion and irritation. Historians still argue whether Romans eventually got used to the noise or simply accepted permanent sleep deprivation as their fate. Judging by your current state, this city is trying to break you. Your eyelids grow heavy though, slowly, despite everything. Maybe you'll finally drift off. But just as you begin slipping into sleep, just as your breathing slows, just as your muscles loosen, someone begins playing a drum in the courtyard. A drum, at night. You bolt upright, whispering the ancient Roman equivalent of, "Why is this my life?" You flop back onto your mattress, accepting defeat. You might sleep tonight, but it won't be restful. It won't be peaceful. And it definitely won't be quiet. And tomorrow? Tomorrow you'd have to do all of this again. Luckily for tonight's purposes, you only have to survive one Roman day. And as you drift toward exhaustion, teetering between panic and surrender, the final truth settles onto your chest like warm dust. You wouldn't last long here. No one soft, modern, and sleep-dependent would. And yet, your day still isn't over. Because before exhaustion finally claims you, you're about to face one last quiet moment of realization. You'd never survive a single day in Imperial Rome, and now you know exactly why. You lie there in the dark, staring up at the cracked ceiling of your insula, your body so tired it feels weightless. The noise still swirls around you, murmurs, footsteps, creaking beams, a distant argument that may or may not be about stolen olives. But there's finally a slight lull, a softening of Rome's relentless soundtrack. For the first time today you have a moment to breathe, a moment to reflect, and that's when it hits you. You survived. Barely. One full day in Imperial Rome. But the truth is painfully clear. You wouldn't survive many more. Your mind drifts back through every chaotic hour, the morning crowds battering you like waves, the terrifying carts threatening to clip your toes, the bathhouse rituals you fumbled through, the crushing midday heat that nearly melted your spine, the food stalls serving delicious but dangerous meals, the labour you couldn't do, the officials who nearly questioned you into oblivion, the forum arguments you escaped by luck and improvisation, the temple rituals you prayed you didn't ruin, the street performers turning public space into a circus, the gladiator frenzy that made your heart thump in fear, the elite district where every wrong glance felt like a risk, the night shadows and very real dangers hiding within them, the tavern chaos, the smells, the public latrines, the chamber pots raining down like divine punishment, the sleepless noise that fills the city like a heartbeat. Every moment, every sensation, every sound of the day replays in your mind, and you realize just how fragile you are in this place, just how soft modern life has made you, just how impossibly tough, resilient, adaptable ancient Romans had to be simply to exist. You shift on your straw-filled mattress, wincing as a piece of it pokes your back. The air feels thick, humid with the day's leftover heat. You hear a rat scrambling somewhere between the wall beams. You hear a woman humming a lullaby. You hear the faint clatter of pottery being stacked in the distance, someone already preparing for dawn. And slowly your perspective changes. Despite the exhaustion, despite the sensory overload, despite the near disasters, There's something awe-inspiring here. Rome doesn't apologize for itself. It simply is. Massive, messy, alive, eternal. You think of the aqueducts carrying water across impossible distances. You think of the temples carved with stories older than any living memory. You think of the forum humming with debate and ambition. You think of the bustling markets, the laughter, the street music, the people who carry on despite everything. Rome isn't trying to destroy you, it's just not designed for your world. You try to imagine doing this again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. The thought alone makes your muscles tense. You're certain of it now, you would crumble in a week, maybe even in 2 days, possibly by tomorrow morning when someone wakes you up with more late-night drumming. You close your eyes. The city murmurs around you. Voices fade in and out like passing dreams. A dog barks once. A cartwheel squeaks in the distance. A baby fusses. Someone snores, loudly. Someone else knocks something over and curses. It's chaotic, but there's rhythm here too. Rome's own strange lullaby. Your thoughts soften. Your breathing slows. Your limbs grow heavy. You survived Imperial Rome. But you understand now more than ever. No modern traveller would survive a single day here. Not truly. Not comfortably. Not without sheer luck. And as your tired mind finally begins sinking into sleep, one last thought drifts through quietly. Maybe that's why history feels so big. Because the past wasn't just different. It was another world entirely. One you can visit in imagination, but could never live in. Your eyes finally close. You surrender to exhaustion. And Rome, loud, messy, magnificent Rome, keeps moving around you. Let yourself drift now, gently, slowly, as if moving farther from the crowded streets of ancient Rome and closer to the soft comfort of your own quiet world. The sounds of the city begin to fade, little by little, until they blur into a distant hum. No more shouting vendors, no more rattling carts, no more footsteps echoing in dark alleyways. Just the steady rhythm of your own breath, easing into calm. Imagine the glow of lamplight dimming, the heat of the Roman sun dissolving into a cool, peaceful night. The stone walls around you soften, the rough straw beneath you turns to a familiar mattress, and the restless energy of the ancient city melts away like dust in warm water. You're no longer navigating crowds or dodging carts or trying to decipher strange rituals. You're simply here, safe, supported, letting the day fall away. Feel your shoulders loosen, your jaw relax, your hands rest quietly at your sides. Let every muscle soften, as if Rome's endless noise is fading behind a closed door. You've travelled far through heat, chaos, laughter and danger, and now you can let all of it drift away, gently, like a feather settling. With each breath, sink a little deeper into stillness. With each exhale, release just a bit more tension. The world grows quieter, slower, softer. You're back in your own time now, a place with clean water, quiet nights, soft pillows, and safety at your fingertips. Allow that comfort to wrap around you like a warm blanket. Let the last remnants of Rome slip into the background, leaving only a calm, sleepy peace. Rest now. You've earned it. You're safe. You're home.